This time, I have the pleasure of introducing Phillip. Phil has a really unique story for any of you that haven't heard it, and I'm not going to ruin it, but Phil's story is one that he's going to share. Actually, it's his father's story about how he became here to the United States. Phil?
All right, thanks Dale for inviting me back to be able to share. I'm going to call what I'm sharing today is Why Am I Here? I want to share a story about my father, Pham. He was a first lieutenant for the South Vietnamese Air Force and a pilot for the C-130 Hercules. On April 3rd, 1975, he did the unthinkable. He believed if Saigon falls, if we were not the first to leave, we definitely won't be the second. With lots of prayer, my father stole a C-130 cargo plane from the VNAF and flew my family and 50 others out of Saigon to seek the freedom that would have been taken away from us. Please allow me to elaborate. The mission for that day was to fly a food resupply mission to Pham. Instead, he somehow talked the co-pilot out of his mission to take place so he can fly with his best friend and a sister squadron. It helped that the co-pilot was looking forward to going out on a date with a lady friend and gladly swapped out. During wartime, there was ration on field. Planes were filled with enough gas to fly to their destination and only refueled if they were able to get back. On that day, a crewman forgot about the fuel ration and took an extended smoke break, giving the plane a full tank of gas. When my father found out, the crewman apologized and asked not to be reported. My father gave him a stern look and told him not to do it again. My father unplugged the transponders, radio communication to avoid detection, and told the crew that headquarters changed their mission to fly southeast to evacuate a group of civilians instead of the resupply mission. They flew at treetop levels to avoid radar and made its way to Long Tan Air Base, which was abandoned by the U.S. the year before in 1973. When they landed, they unloaded 20,000 pounds of rice, and my dad informed the crew that he was commandeering the plane. The loadmaster quickly departed the plane, believing defection, and went to alert the local military authorities. About 50 last-minute passengers boarded the side door toward the nose of the plane, and the supplies were being pushed out the cargo ramp at the rear of the plane. During the chaos, a 2-year-old child was trampled on due to the mad rush of people on the plane. It was reported that a young mother attempted to rescue her bloody and lifeless 2-year-old daughter and unfortunately left her 4-month-old baby on the runway while boarding the plane. Freedom is not free. Upon landing, unloading the cargo, and boarding over 50 passengers, it took about 7 minutes. As the plane headed towards the runway, the military police came by in their jeep and pointed an M79 grenade launcher at the cockpit and ordered the plane to stop. With a lot of gall, my father told his friend they wouldn't shoot. Sure enough, they let up and the plane took off. The plane made its way to Singapore. Upon landing, the 50-plus refugees were placed in jail for illegally entering the country. Singapore notified the South Vietnamese government of the unscheduled arrival. Troops from South Vietnam were being sent to Singapore to bring the escapees back and to try my father and his friend as war criminals. Day by day, no one came, and it was announced on April 30th, 1975, that the capital city, Saigon, fell to the communist regime. Eventually, the U.S. took all 50-plus crew and passengers in as refugees to the land of the free, the United States of America. Later, the C-130 was utilized by Selfridge Air National Guard about an hour from here. When it retired, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum eventually took possession of the plane. Currently, there are negotiations to get the plane restored and out on public display. If my father was here, in his humble nature, he would tell you that he only borrowed the plane. He tells people that he gave the plane back. Why am I here? The miraculous story would not exist if it was not for the help of the United States Armed Forces. Let me explain. My dad attended language school at Lackland Air Force Base in 1969. He also received flight and military training at Randolph and Keesler Air Force Base. Learning to fly is a prerequisite to stealing or borrowing a plane. It was the U.S. troops who fought alongside the South Vietnamese military to give our family the window of opportunity. It was an abandoned U.S. airstrip that was used as a launch pad to pick up my family and many others. It was an American military cargo plane, the C-130, that was used to transport people to safety. And it was the U.S. Air Force that escorted 50-plus people from Singapore to Camp Pendleton in San Diego as refugees. This story would not be complete until we acknowledge one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. They are the names and the stars that represent those around us. Many of the names on the wall didn't know what they were fighting for. I believe they fought for something great. They fought for freedom, not just for my family, but for many others in similar predicaments. This freedom came at a very steep price, their very own lives. I was raised in a Christian household. It's hard not to believe that there is a God when you have such a unique family history. However, I wasn't always a believer. It was a struggle going to church, hearing about God's love when there was so much bloodshed in the world. Why, God? Why? I would continually ask while growing up. This is how God answered me. I found a passage in the Bible, and it was 1 John 3:16. It reads, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid his life down for us, and we ought to lay our lives for our brothers and sisters." With the help of Jesus, now my Lord and Savior, he helped fulfill what was missing in my life. He reminded me of where I came from and the sacrifices it took to literally buy the freedom my family has today. When I reflect on the memorial walls I see around me, I see that there are plenty of brave men and women who sacrificed their lives not only for their brothers and sisters, but also for strangers in a strange land like my family. Why am I here? While growing up, every year my father would sit us down and share our miraculous escape and share how blessed we are living in a free country. He expressed deep gratitude for the sacrifices and the commitment of the American soldier. As a child, I was proud where I came from, but I found myself very conflicted. When I saw a Vietnam vet, sadly, I would go out of my way to ignore them. I see some of them confined to a wheelchair, having lost a limb and other ailments. I felt a deep sense of guilt, for I thought my family was the reason they were in that predicament. As I became an adult, I learned more about Vietnam and the war. More troubling was I learned that these vets were never welcomed home. They were despised and neglected. Over the years, God continually tugged at my heart. I knew deep down how I ignored the vets was wrong on so many levels. How can I claim to love God and not love my neighbor? I was being hypocritical. I prayed for many years for courage. I asked God to give me the opportunity and the wisdom to speak from my heart. That day came only a few years ago. My kids had a special assembly at school during Veterans Day. At the event, I noticed a gentleman proudly wearing his Vietnam vet hat. I forced my way over across the auditorium to talk to him, and I said, "Hi, my name is Pham. I'm Vietnamese. I want to thank you for the sacrifice for the freedom I have today." He reached over to me, tugged me towards him, and whispered in my ear, "No, thank you." At that point, I knew what my life mission was moving forward. If any of you who served in Vietnam War, can you please stand up or raise your hand if you can't? Remain standing, please. I'm sorry that you were never welcomed home. I'm sorry that you were never thanked for the services and sacrifices you made. Being away from your family, seeing fellow soldiers not return home, and fighting for strangers you didn't know. First of all, I want to personally say that I am sorry I ignored you and your fellow veterans for the greater part of my life. I let what I thought was a sense of guilt get in the way of doing what was right. And I realized it was my own selfish pride and my ungratefulness that kept us apart. Although I cannot speak for everyone, I want you all to know that your sacrifices allowed my family to experience to have the freedom we have here in the United States that we would not have had if we were not able to make it out of Vietnam. I would not be standing here today if it was not for you. You are my heroes and guardian angels. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and welcome home. Please have a seat. Although I share my story to the Vietnam vets, I believe freedom comes in many different varieties, but it starts with those who bravely fought for it. Now, why else am I here? With the lifeline given to my family through the sacrifices of blood and sweat of all of you who stood up and the names of the memorials around us, I want you to know that the sacrifices were not done in vain. Proudly, my family sought and became U.S. citizens. We chose to acclimate and maintain our heritage. We made it a priority to learn the English language. I saw my parents work hard, pulling their way out of poverty to be able to help pay for the education that they did. We became better, embracing what America had to offer. I believe the United States of America is the greatest country on this earth. That is why millions of people want to come to the U.S. both legally and illegally. We are the greatest nation on earth because of the sacrifices of the men and women who fought to defend the freedom, both domestic and abroad, and will continue to fight and defend to preserve the freedom for future generations. We sought the American dream and are living proof that living in a free country, working hard, you can accomplish anything. Before I close, I mentioned earlier there was a young mother that left her infant on the tarmac to attend to her 2-year-old daughter. It turns out that the toddler was just knocked unconscious, and she is living in North Carolina today. As for the infant, his aunt noticed that there was a baby lying in the middle of the runway. She jumped out of the moving plane, scooped him up, chasing after the plane as it taxied away. That nearly orphaned infant is standing before you today, sharing how grateful he is to call the United States of America his home. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.
Again, I want to thank Phil and his family for coming. Just a little other side commentary. Phil's dad was here last year when he shared that story. And the thing about it is, not just for one day, but for a day and a half, Phil and his dad walked up and down the wall that heals, helping so many Vietnam veterans heal. Many of them have never met a man that is now here from Vietnam and could offer again his thanks to those that he gave so much so that he could be here. And it was awesome. I had so many people tell me how much it really meant. And I can tell you how many people are then healed because of what Phil did and his dad did on that day or those 2 days. It was an awesome, awesome experience. And it's something, again, I know that so many have come back to me and said, thank you. Please let Phil know he's helped me to reach my healing, which is something that we really all needed. Not everyone has that opportunity. But when Phil gave that message last year, we had 400 people in the audience. They all walked away in awe. And so please share Phil's message, and especially with your kids or your grandkids, because again, this is an opportunity that you have to again share a tool, something that again it's just an important thing, because that helps to make us realize that there is still opportunity for us here, and it needs to be preserved for our freedom. If we don't, we're going to give it away, and we have to do everything in our power to heal and to help the nation as a whole heal, to become one. And I want to thank Phil for that. Phil, if I could have you and your family come forward, I have just a little token that I'd like to give to you. This is something that reflects again ourselves and the wall behind us. This is the World War II memorial wall, the Wall of Stars. For those that you aren't familiar with this story is that when this wall was created, there are 4,048 gold stars on this wall. Each of those gold stars represents 100 of our family from the United States that is missing in action or didn't make it home from World War II. We have created in tribute to that a special star. And that star on it says the price of freedom. And it has 100 on it, representing the 100. And I want to give this to each of you that hopefully you can wear proudly and share. It's just a small token of our appreciation and our support for you and all that you do to share your message with everyone to help us to create the healing. Thank you, Phil.